What's up, people?
Salute.
Salute.
Good evening.
I'm gonna share this right now to my personal page.
Okay.
What's good, y'all? Give us a minute. You know, we like Teddy Riley to this, brand new to the streaming game. So give us a minute while we get set up. But we're gonna be having a great dialogue tonight. So
yeah, it's the eve of the election, so we got some things to talk about. See?
We both fighting COVID. That's why we ain't got masks on.
See, started something.
Don't be speaking that,
joke
right?
like that.
I know we can't, right?
But yeah, we're gonna talk about some things tonight. We just here tackling some important issues, obviously, where we are at as a country. So we're gonna let some people come in, sit back, relax. We're gonna have a conversation tonight. We live on which page?
On the Let My People Breathe page. So I just posted to my personal timeline.
This one?
Yep.
I'm not seeing a live video though.
Yeah, see. I just posted it on my personal.
Okay. All right.
Oh, you didn't see a live video come up?
No.
You refresh the page?
Yep, now I see it.
Okay, some folks coming on in now.
Yes, sir.
Folks pulling up. All right.
What's going on? What's up?
What's up, my peoples? Give us be patient with us as we figure this live streaming thing out. But we're really just here to have a discussion. For those who are joining from my personal page, you obviously know who I am. And those, I guess you could introduce me to your people.
You want to introduce me first, or you good?
Well, this is my guy, Donald Cogdale. We're doing this from our page, Let My People Breathe, which is a new organization and offshoot or catalyst organization that really catalyzed out of the King movement and a brotherhood that we're part of here in New York City, but it's a national brotherhood. And Let My People Breathe came out of a protest that we did in light of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and all the other obvious unjust killings that folks know about. This June 5th, this summer. And we're bringing Let My People Breathe together as a coalition. So we're having it on this platform. And Donald's co-founder of that organization. So
thank you, sir.
Yep.
And you mentioned the protest on June 6th, the Genesis.
That's what I said. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I said June 5th. But it was June 6th. We changed the date.
We had a rainy day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, my brother. I'm Donald Cogdale. Again, as he said, thank you for joining us in this conversation. Come on in. Get you something to drink. Some popcorn, some chips, whatever.
Word.
It's
some almond butter. He giving you the wrong kind of advice.
I mean, it could be vegan chips.
It gotta be.
You gonna say almond butter?
Word. Comfortable. You know what I mean?
This is my man Cliff. Yeah. Cliff Means. He is a good friend of mine. First and foremost.
Yeah.
Good friend. We've known each other
11 years, 10 years.
10 years now. And he's a great leader in the community, great thinker, and we started the New York City King chapter together about 6 years ago.
Yeah, going on 7.
And going on 7. And King is a brotherhood that's about helping men fulfill their God-given potential. And really, we had been vision and brainstorming, and in the hallways we used to live right across from each other. I didn't even mean to go through this whole story, but just brainstorming how we could be impactful in our community. Yeah. I think God strategically placed us.
Yeah.
We didn't even know. He set us up.
Yeah. One of my best friends lived in the same room as he did, and then 2 lifetime friends living in the same room.
Wow, that's crazy.
Which is pretty funny.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Matt Fredericks, if you're watching, that's you.
Yeah. So, yeah. Salute.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and then just journeying and trying to make a difference. The challenges that we face as Black men in this country are very real. He's seen it in his way. I've seen it in my way, and really, we really want to be about that action and be about solutions.
Yeah.
And so tonight, that's why we're here, to have a real discussion, talk about some things that maybe we don't hear often, or if somebody is still struggling, though a lot of people have voted, if you're still thinking or wondering who to vote for, Black men, we want to talk to you.
Right.
we got some talking to do. We just want to say what's on our heart and what's been going on, and also answer any questions that might be out there. So
yeah. And we don't have all the answers. We feel strongly how we feel, but it's about discussion. Today I put a post out that some may think is gaslighting. I put a post out about abortion, and I appreciate, that's not what we're going to hit on it, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But it's to say that nothing should be taboo to talk about and discuss.
Right.
Right. We should never get to a point as a group, us coming from the Christian evangelical group, that being the main group we're in. You should always, whatever group that is, if you're liberal, right, and I would say I'm, a lot of people call me liberal, right? Mm-hmm. That's a label, but if you're in that group, you should never fit in 100% of the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you should be pushing back on the scaffolding of your group and whatever they have settled there. Not that you're disrespectful, but if there's no room for conversation, that lets you know it's maybe a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
So we welcome conversation, but we got our views.
Yeah. and the thing about it is, I just think our views that are rooted in the Bible, they came way before these parties.
Right.
You know what I mean? I get frustrated if I'm talking about the marginalized, I'm talking about, our people, the poor and the foreigner. Like, I could be called left leaning.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I'm talking about family values,
right.
I could be called conservative.
Right. Right.
Both of those are incomplete parts
right.
of really things that were set in motion way before these
right.
parties came.
Right.
And so, I agree with some things on the left. I agree with some things on the right. But you're not going to pigeonhole me into that, And so, so we're just going to have a conversation. And as a disclaimer, we are not against anyone, any person. I think we have love for everybody.
Oh, right. I'm like,
what? We may say some things that you may not like, and we're going to talk candidly, but understand, it's all in love. And yeah.
So, I think a good place to start is, why are we here? You know, we already talked about kind of what brought us to King and what caused us to start Let My People Breathe. But I'll ask you the question, what made you feel this conversation on the even of election in a very divisive time? What made you feel it was urgent for us just to talk about where we're at right now?
Oh man. Well, I feel deeply in my heart that, that this election is not the same. It's not your typical election. I think the signs are in the air, the writing's on the wall. When I look at, things that historians are saying, scholars, all the signs tell me this is not normal.
Right.
The early voting, this is not normal. You know what I mean? The FBI, CIA agents that have come out and spoke against this president and the institutions, it just lets me know something is not normal now. And I've known that already.
Right.
But, when I talk to people, certain people that may not be paying attention to what's going on, and they feel that it's just, they're both bad, when I hear that, it lets me know there's some people that are not paying attention. And I feel like if they can, they may not hear it from CNN and Fox. People may be tired of the news. It's the year of the pandemic.
Right.
People have died. Some people just kind of shut off.
Yeah.
And they just have jumbled everything together.
Right.
And if they hear from us having a conversation, I think it may be a difference, because I talked to a brother, he's a great leader. And just having a conversation with him about this election, he said, there's some things I didn't think about.
Right.
And so, and he didn't vote yet. So it's like, okay, because he had been listening to, same old, we can be people that are in denial sometimes.
Right.
Even in our individual lives, we could be getting abused at work.
Right.
We could be getting mismanaged and treated unfairly, but we still stick around.
Right.
You know what I mean? You could be getting abused in a relationship. And so I think as humans, we have a tendency to be in denial about certain things. And so if somebody was still curious, I think this conversation, I thought it was important to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And also, just having hope about,
Right.
because there's the fear is ratcheted up very high.
Yeah.
We see, quote unquote, non-militia groups.
Right.
Possible talks of civil war.
Yeah.
And I just think as Christians, we got to have the light. So, I think that's wise.
Yeah.
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 What about you?
I think part of it is taking back ownership. I think that, I realized from our last conversation we had over 80 folks. I keep saying over 80. It was 78. My bad. That's see,
you go round.
See, right? Round up to the nearest tip. Here I am doing that selling, right? But we had close to 80 people, come onto our live stream that we did that was all about Black men. And I got to tell you, if you look in a YouTube comment section, or you go onto social media and you look, if that's what you choose as your primary barometer for people's attitudes and their flexibility, plasticity, if you will,
right?
Then it's a dark place, because when you're talking to people in comment section, like you're on Twitter, that's where polarization is it's just so bad, right? And so it's like, it's crazy. People are either here or here, or you find this like people just like, it's like they like fighting to get to, especially in our spaces, they fighting to see who can be the most neutral. It's like, who could be the most in the middle? You know what I mean? Like it's a race to the middle line, which to me right now in this moment, I'm gonna be real with you. I think it's a cowardly position. I'm gonna just be flat out. I think.
Okay, talk about it. Why do you feel that way?
Because, well, I think that we're here. You're only really seeing that in one social group. Or let me just say, obviously, I recognize the church is not just a social institution, right? Okay. It's a spiritual one. However, when people say evangelical, that's a political term, or it's become one. Yeah. However you feel about it. Yeah. It's a way to identify a largely white base that votes generally conservative on issues of abortion and gay marriage, or probably not gay marriage any longer, but larger issues pertaining to that community, right? And so the people that we intersect with, as Black men who are Christians, we have a large base of people who, that's the group you're getting the middle ground from. You know what I'm saying? You're not hearing it sort of outside, people looking, you don't hear that sort of middle ground. It's mostly coming from our spaces, because those issues are such third rail issues that if you come out strong for either one, you can be branded as politicizing the faith, or you could be branded, especially if you're a Black person and you vote liberal, you could be branded as a Marxist or a socialist, or wanting to tear down the Black family, or sanctioning Black genocide through abortion. So that's, if you're a pastor or you're a music artist or your base is largely faith-based, that's a financial and economic decision you're making when you take that neutral position, right? So I don't say cowardly in a condescending way, because the reality is my money ain't at risk like theirs is. So I mean it in a respectful but real way. Like, I just think that that's guiding a lot of that middle ground, when I know these people in their personal lives don't feel that way. Like they not rocking with what's happening right now. And so I appreciate people like Kirk Franklin, who've been very blunt about where we're at and where we need to
But why do you think people, I mean, you may feel like you said this, but people are running towards neutrality, right? And I think it goes bigger than that group, though. You know what I mean? I'm just curious.
I don't agree with that. I'm joking. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
No, I mean, there is a run towards neutrality, because I think the perspective is that is safer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Even if your pocket isn't affected. You know what I mean?
That's a fact. I gave you an example earlier before we did this of somebody who was in that position. Relationally connected. And, Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think with American culture and individualism, like we don't want to be, we want to have our choices. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, and people just also don't like being given two options.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I don't like it. You know what I mean?
You ever looked at a menu with two options? You're probably not staying.
Exactly. And it speaks to our privilege in culture. We want buffet.
Right.
We want a full closet of clothes. We want many shoes.
Right.
And so I just think that, getting away from that is, we start feeling like our identity is taken away or something like that. But I do think people put a sacredness on neutrality.
Right. Yes.
People put a sacredness as if that is righteous. You know what I mean? And there are times in our culture, times in our past, neutrality was not good. I mean, it was very dangerous, actually. And I don't think we serve a a God that's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
We serve a God that there's truth and there's a lie, there's right and there's wrong.
Come on.
So there's nothing wrong with being biased per se. You know what I'm saying? It's the shame, it's the different things. You know what I'm saying?
So like, you raised some good points. So let me back off then. I think what I said earlier is an element of
right.
that response.
Right.
And so I would say there's a couple more, but I think now you're going into, if we want to talk about the for lack of a better term, the psychology of the Christian person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a desire to be untainted by the political divisiveness.
Yes.
So if you can come out and say I'm neutral, then you could say I prioritize my faith above politics.
Right.
You can claim that.
Right.
You know, you have a hold to that.
Right.
Everybody else worships at the idolatry of red and blue.
Right.
But I'm pure.
I serve the Lord.
I serve God.
Tomorrow,
as for me and my household.
Tomorrow, Jesus is on the throne.
Right.
No matter who's elected. No matter who's elected.
Right.
But brother, Jesus on the throne today.
Right.
He was on the throne yesterday.
He'll be on the throne tomorrow. Right.
You know, but I think that's some of the shaping of Western theology, though. And that's where, you know, effects like Christendom,
right.
You know, we have tried to escape our responsibility and our involvement in government.
Right.
Biblically, the people of God have always been involved because the government is nothing but the affairs and direction of the community.
Right.
And so, you know, when God put kings in place, justice was extremely important. Mm-hmm. Equality was extremely important. You know what I mean? And kings were put in place, at least in Israel, for defending the weak, defending the people. You know what I mean? It wasn't about expansion and conquering like secular empires.
Right.
You know, and so, but even with kings, God still put prophets in place like Nathan to check them, check Solomon, check Saul. You know what I'm saying? And in the New Testament, we see Jesus doing the same thing, checking the leaders of the day.
And we are Nathan. There was no democracy.
Come on.
In David's time.
There was no
vote.
There was no vote.
We are Nathan.
Right.
We are the ones that go to David and say, no, bruh.
Right.
You can't do that. You got to go. Like, that's our job. And that is that is the context in which we live. Yeah. And so I think people have a hard time with the new tech, you know. And again, I like to speak in different languages, right? So right now we speak in a certain language to our community directly, right? And so people like to, they have a hard time with, because see, in the New Testament now, right, it becomes, well, it's the kingdom of God now, right? So if I'm sort of like given to any party, so to speak, and I say given, of course, if you're given, that's different, right? But if I'm for any party, then somehow that message of the New Testament gets diluted, right? Because the message of the New Testament is supposed to be, okay, that kingdom, we thought it was going to come like this, but it's not coming like that.
Right.
It's coming through God's Holy Spirit, and, you know, we're going to change the world through spiritual action and the coming of Christ, right? That's the perception of the New Testament way, right?
Which is
contrasting with Old Testament. I'm just saying what
no, it's true,
right? What the mindset
people will say, oh, the Old Testament is justice,
or politics,
is grace. You know,
right? They'll make statements like that.
Completely false. You know,
totally false. And my only thing to people like that is, I'm like, well, bruh, Jesus fed 5,000 people with bread, and they'll say, but it wasn't the government. I say, well, you got you gonna feed 5,000? Next time you, well, Peter, his shadow walked and healed everybody. Okay, you.
Right. That's healthcare, brother.
That right. Okay. Go on. Next time you ready to go out there with your shadow.
Right.
All right. Right. But no, you're doing soup kitchens and you're all good with it as long as it's coming from your group.
Right.
So it really boils down to this trust issue. Right. This issue of trust. Right. And it funnels through every single conversation. Right? Where we are with the media, it's a trust issue. Mm-hmm. People tell you the mainstream media. Well, Tucker Carlson's show is the highest rated show in cable news at night. That's not mainstream media. That's mainstream. But when you say mainstream, you're talking about the sources that you don't trust. Right. So it's a way of undermining them and attributing a power to them that gives this sort of image that they have an unfair advantage, and they're bombarding us with information and telling us how to think. Right. When your boy is getting God knows how many views, I don't know what I know it's the highest rated cable network show at that time of night. Okay. So that's as mainstream as you can get. Not to mention where we are with social media. Most people aren't guys our age or people in their 30s, even before, they're not getting their information sitting in front of a TV. Right. They're scrolling through their phone. They're looking at memes. Mm-hmm. They're looking at articles. That, I would say, is more powerful at this stage in the game than the mainstream media. It is. Right? Yeah. So, but the issue is you trust those sources. Yeah. So we're really talking about a trust issue. You don't trust the government, and neither do I fully trust the government. But if you want to start talking about who to trust, the church's reputation to act on behalf of folks like you and I next to the government, actually, I would say the government has actually done more. Right. So, I mean, if we want to use that as the only basis for trust, I don't think that the government has done any more than the church has to lose our trust in the sense of us holding them accountable to do not to save us, but to do their job. Right. Which and I'll end with this because I want you to, but for Black Americans, like this is where I get, so the people who are saying the government, look, the government has done a lot of bad stuff to people, right? The government has done a lot of shady stuff to people, and the US government is responsible for a lot of wickedness, right? Historically, currently, and will be in the future, right? So that's a fact, right? But when it comes to Black Americans and the little guy, not just Black people, but the little guy, whoever you want to say, women, minorities, immigrants, when it comes to us in this country, if it was not for the federal government, not state government, not the state government, federal government, say it again, stepping in on our behalf, folks, we be working 16-hour days right now with no vacation. Right. Like you will be getting taken to the cleaners. Right. The only institution in America that's really had our backs, not always, but because we've been putting that pressure on and we forced them to act at different points in history, has been the federal government coming in when we actually bus boycott, labor movement, you name it, all of those movements, we actually would have been crushed. We've painted a rosy picture like we were winning all those fights. Right. Like we weren't. Right. Like they were starving us out. Right. But the government came in and changed the laws and responded to us and made them act on our behalf. That's how you got unions. Right. That's how you got desegregation. Right. That's how you got the civil rights bill passed. Right. So don't demonize the federal government to me as a reason for, don't minimize the weight of the meaning that this has for us.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah. Great point. And I feel like it's time we kind of just be more candid about what we, talking about. And I love the conversation because people have to realize that it's not the same reality for everyone.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, there's an ownership that white America has when they speak about this country.
Mm-hmm.
And the rights that they have to protest against this country that are not, you know, the view is not the same when we are protesting and criticizing the country. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, they're quick to tell us, oh, go back to Africa if you don't like it.
Right.
But what about you?
Right. Because you definitely didn't like it a few years ago.
Right. I mean, so, yeah. I mean, we have to look at this and be fair.
Right.
And so, I'm curious, who do you like in this election? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. It's funny. I asked somebody today, my neighbor. I asked my neighbor, me and my neighbor are real cool. He's a white guy, working class guy. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm keeping my voice down now, but he wouldn't actually, I could speak up even if he hears me, he won't be upset. But working class guy, great guy. And we're just talking and we've always vibed, but I won't lie. Like, I didn't know where he stood because I know that people who we may speak the same language culturally.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm from Detroit. He's a working class guy from Queens. Grew up in hip hop culture. Mm-hmm. You know, Italian. You know, we're gonna speak the same language on 90% of things.
Right.
You know, whether it's people in Great Neck where I live and how privileged they can act, we can vibe on that.
Right.
But I've seen it a million times where when it comes to this issue, people sort of fall back into their groups and aren't able to see. And so I took a risk. And first of all, even if he told me he was voting opposite, I would have had a reasonable and loving conversation with him. It wouldn't have been like, oh, I'm not talking to you no more.
Right.
I don't believe in that or move in that spirit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I was a little hesitant because I'm like, I don't want no tension either. Mm-hmm. This is my guy. You know what I'm saying? But I asked him who he was voting for. So it's funny when you ask me because it's like there's a lot of we got to the point where that's a very private question.
Right.
And I'm not that old, but I don't remember it ever being this important of a question.
Right.
Like people used to be able to indicate where they stood a little more.
Right.
You know, person to person without it costing so much relationally. But it was funny. He told me he was voting for. Actually, he was undecided, but I think he was testing the waters with me too. But anyway, definitely voting for Joe Biden. And you know, for me, I'll say this. You know, I have voted across both parties. Mm-hmm. The first election that I voted in was 2000 actually. You know, was the George Bush elect. Now that vote was a very uninformed vote. It was the first. I had just turned 18. Mm-hmm. You know, I just kind of
put it in there.
Just put it in there. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Yeah, I just going through the exercise. You know what I'm saying? That was it.
My people fought for me to vote.
Right. Hey, I'm gonna show up. That's it. You know what I mean? I got no questions. I'm just gonna do it. So, but I voted across the spectrum. Obviously, I've changed personally over time. But in this election, I could tell you, you know, if the Democrats had put forward somebody who was the equivalent of Donald Trump, where we have a mounting, and let me tell you, here, my main issue with Trump is not what he's done in the past.
Right.
My issue is how he deals with the present and how he's reckoned with his past. Right? He's yet, the only thing I've seen him actually reckon with are two things. One, he had to apologize for the Access Hollywood video. and he had to get up there with a bunch of black pastors and say, yes, President Obama was born in the United States. Those are the only two things that I've seen him actually recant. That's in a wide array of statements, particularly the most inflammatory being the Central Park Five. And I think that's symbolic of so much.
Yeah.
And you saw two examples up on the stage in that last debate of a willingness to admit a mistake. And of course, Joe Biden's mistake is not just a small mistake, it's a huge mistake.
Right.
And he has a lot of restitution that has to be paid for that mistake.
Right.
But it is a mistake that he was able to, what you need from a leader, a mistake he was willing to say he made.
Right.
Donald Trump has not been asked or demanded to answer for that by his base. A politician is reflective of his base's demands. What are the demands your base places on you?
Right.
How accountable are you?
Right.
Right? If the reason Trump had to apologize for the Access Hollywood video is because it was a sin of sexuality. And that is a crime in the evangelical community. That's why Jerry Falwell was able to do all he did. And the thing that got him in was a exposure of an affair.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And doing all that stuff with his wife. That's what got him out the door.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when we look, if they were to put somebody forward of the same kind of character, I would be voting for Republican.
Okay.
You know, I'll be voting for a Joe Biden equivalent kind of Republican that I think demonstrates traditional responsibility. People say, well, he's not a politician. Trump is not a politician. What do you mean by that?
Right.
What does that mean? Like, what are you exactly saying?
Right.
Because you're saying that, well, a politician is a phony. That's what you're basically indicating.
Right.
There are sectors of society, particularly if they involve service. If you're a CEO of a hospital, if you are the principal of a high school or any school,
right.
If you are, if he was CEO of Virgin Records, cool. Or
right.
CEO of G Unit, cool. You can function that way. Mm-hmm. Entertainment business, cool.
Yeah.
The service business, where we actually have a Judeo-Christian tradition of leadership, a model that's actually built on the standards of Judeo-Christian values.
Right.
There's a certain leadership expectation that you are supposed to bring to the table in any service sector in our country.
Right.
Trump could not be the CEO of my company because
right.
we serve the marginalized, and you have to bring a certain presentation to that job.
Right.
And mature leadership to that job. That's what, so when people say that it's fake or he's not a politician, what you're saying is that we should not expect that from a government service position.
Right.
You got a lot to say.
I think you're hitting on something. Because all of the, you go to any leadership class, mm-hmm. Any career development workshop, mm-hmm. right? Because everybody in America wants to be such a great leader.
Right.
And what are the things that you're taught? You're taught communication skills, you're taught decision making, mm-hmm. you're taught integrity, you're taught even character.
Right.
And it's not character for pure motive per
right.
se, or integrity for pure motive, but it's for business.
Right.
Not to mess up your business, not to mess up your sales, not to mess up your partnerships,
right.
and your profile, right? And so these things are the glue for that. And then when we get to Trump, who doesn't exhibit all the leadership things that this culture preaches
in every other sector.
Bro,
right.
You say he can't be the CEO of your company. He can't be the CEO of a lot of things.
Right.
And it just shows you what this country's idols still are.
Right.
Above the leadership, above the quote unquote servant leadership that evangelicals are supposed to raise up.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's Christians are supposed to be about servant leadership. I don't know what I see about servant leadership in this president. I don't see it.
Right.
A man that says the man asked him, the interviewer asked him, I don't remember his name, but in the interview he asked him, what do you think about repentance? If you ever repent? He's like, no, I don't like to live with regrets.
Right.
That is a blasphemy to a Christian. You know what I mean? Like, but you see pastors heralding him. And so, but get into, I'm voting Biden because there's a major leadership crisis that I see within this president and I see within the campaign.
Right.
The things that we are seeing are unprecedented. If you're paying attention, we should know that this is not the same as usual.
Yeah.
Right? The number of people that have come out and written books in his own cabinet.
Right. Unprecedented.
Unparalleled. Nothing. I mean, his own family. Mind you, this is a sitting president. and people can see the dangers of what's going on.
Bro.
I mean, FBI agents, intelligence, CIA intelligence. I mean, he's debased institutions that he is supposed to be aligned with. And as a leader, when you cannot mobilize and get everybody on the same page, and this is the thing, as a leader, I've directed a couple of programs. To isolate somebody is the worst thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
When he first got elected, well, in his campaign for the first time, 2015, 2016, when he started attacking his own U.S. citizens, like we've never seen stuff like that. Right. Or attacking governors, attacking states that didn't support him per se.
Right.
There was no tact in that. You know what I mean? And it just became this justification. Well, they're going at him, so he's going to go back at them. It became this this childish, fight that is just not becoming of a leader, and it's very dangerous.
But he represents, and again, there's no way around it. He represents his politics. Now, he can exploit. Yes, you can exploit a group of people. And I think he has done that. Right? He has definitely done that. And that's on him.
Definitely.
But the reason he's been able to do what he's doing so long is because his base wants that from him. Not all of them.
Right.
Some of them are doing this, right? Just sort of holding their nose.
Yeah. And
he's doing other things that they're so anti-left or so worried about the left direction that they're just like, all right, I got to tolerate Donald Trump. And then you have a large swoop of them. Those people who are holding their nose, they're not waving flags, right? They're not waving flags.
Right.
But the people waving flags, oh, he's a hero to them.
Yeah.
And I think there are and were fears that came out of 2008 that prior to 2008, you could have put Trump up there and I think he would have been swiftly rejected.
Oh, he wouldn't even.
I don't think he would have sniffed.
That's the primary.
Right. And I think he smelled the waters, right? Like Trump's not dumb. Right. He's not dumb in that sense. Like he knew the climate wasn't quite right for him to make that move at that time.
Right.
Had he come forward in the 90s, the mainstream media did have, and I'm using that term in this case because there was no alternative sources of media like that. back in the day. You had, you know, the main ones.
Right.
They would have watched him. Right. Like he would have got called out. It would have been a wrap, you know. Right. But after 08, after Obama, those 8 years, the ground was fertile. Right. For somebody like Trump to exploit grievances and fears that people felt. They wanted a strong man to come out and make and do to those people what they like, make them feel our power. Right. We're not weak, you know, and that's why when he talks down or gives the word, you know, says, you know, basically, I don't care, or, oh, he's hitting back, he's doing, they feel that like, no, that's for me. Right. Right. Like, I don't want him to be some middle of the road, you know, all sides leader. I don't want that from him. That's the flag people. They don't want that from him. The people going to the rap, they don't want that from him. Now, there are some people who would like that.
That's a great point.
You know, some people would want that from him. That's a great point. But they'll hold their nose
people
because
that
he's
felt like they were losing their country.
Yes.
Having a black man named Barack Hussein Obama, you know, they felt like they were losing their country, and they feel like Trump is the take back. Right.
I told you, a guy I really respected well, you know, said to me, you know,
you wrote it. Oh, no.
Nah, he told me, like, we're standing there after a Bible study, you know, and he's the leader of the Bible study, white guy, and high respect for him. And he's a well-educated guy and all that. And this, I think, was like 2011 or something like that. And he goes, man, would you ever imagine if I told you years ago that America would elect a man with the name Barack Hussein Obama? He's like, that shows you how far we've fallen as a country. You know, like, he said that with me standing there, and like, I'm getting like flushed, like, you know, that physical sensation of like discomfort. Yeah. Like, who are you right now? Yeah. Like, he don't have no idea. I'm looking at him like, bruh, you like what you said was just disgusting. Yeah. Yeah, and I just thought, man, what made him feel he could say that with me there and not think about it? What is it about me that's bought into, you know? But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real, like, people don't understand how real white supremacy is, right? And the idolatry of it. I mean, you know, some people may feel white supremacy is strong language. Okay, whiteness. Right. Right. You know, like, just the usual norm, because I just find it interesting when, you know, this country has always taken strides forward in equality and strides back at the same time. Right. You know what I mean? Historically, we've seen us move forward with, taking steps back by conquest and mistreating Native Americans, enslaving our people, and then move forward in the Emancipation Proclamation. Reconstruction, move back. Right. You know what I mean?
It's never just a...
Yeah. It's always kind of like, so we saw the forward with Obama, then we saw the back with Trump. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's, and really it goes back to the four founders when they said, we the people. You know what I mean? Right. They didn't mean all people. Right. You know what I mean? Right. This was their land. This was their time to lead, and so I think I like John Meacham, what he says, you know, making sure our better angels lead. You know what I mean? I think the humanity of people, the contradiction, that the hypocrisy is crazy, bro. I mean, there's enough for us all to thrive. There's enough. I mean, you know how much food people throw away every day? Thousands of pounds of food. You know how many vacant buildings there are? We should have nobody sleeping outside. but there's this fear and anxiety that people have that puts others out in a way that it should never happen. And I think this election, there's fears and anxieties. I mean, I have some concerns the way I see people acting, but I'm just saying, like, it's over the top, and that's what Trump thrives on.
But they've always packaged those things with identity.
Right.
So it can't just be let's help everybody and get everybody health care.
Right.
It's got to be socialism.
Right.
See, it's got to be the left. It's got to be, they juxtapose. Everything comes with, how bills go in the Senate. You tack on, you take a major piece of bill and then you tack on the things that you want.
Yeah.
That's what they've been able to do. They've divided, they've built a coalition of high income whites, a large white base that goes across the income spectrum.
Right.
Because you've convinced the people here in the middle and below that somehow they'll lose their spot in line if you help these people over here. Right. That's what you've sold them.
Yes.
So you had to sell it as a package deal. Yeah. They don't know nothing about tax cuts and big businesses and tax cuts. They don't mean nothing to you.
Right.
But you out here talking about taxes, spending. You don't know nothing about it. It don't mean nothing to you. Right. But they've given you a package.
Right.
$19.99 for package deal.
Right.
White identity, tax cuts.
Right. White identity.
You dig what I'm saying? So you throw that in there, tack that on the bill. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And now I could sell you all these other things that ain't got nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
They talking about, I'm seeing ads come on about a Biden tax cut for folks making $400,000 or more. And you're like, that's about this much.
Right.
What are you so passionate about?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just, that's what's frustrating is that there's a moral cover that's been put on top of white identities that they use to batter, and I hate to use that term they, but because I know that abortion, I know there's people who are genuinely, I've been having conversations today, I know there's people who are genuinely concerned about abortion, concerned about the unborn, and so they don't approach it from a strategic sort of false moral approach, right? But I think that even a lot of folks, even in that camp, are afraid to be honest about how they feel about it.
Okay.
Because they may feel it's wrong, but they don't agree with all the rhetoric around it.
Right.
But they feel obligated to. One, either they don't want to engage that topic, or two, they feel like, man, I could be outed as being, anti-life or.
But when you say they're not being honest about it, like, give me an example. What do you mean?
Meaning they'll say that, well, I agree abortion is wrong, but I think that we should, I don't think we should make it illegal. To me, that doesn't, and when I use the word honest, I don't mean that in a condescending way.
I understand.
I mean, I don't think people are being honest with themselves about how they see it because they don't feel they're allowed to. Because to me, if you think abortion is murder, then I don't understand how you can provide room for treating it as just a social ill. To me, if you see it as murder, treat it like murder. That's me. I'm against murder.
Right.
I'm anti-murder. So if I really believe something is murder, then I'm not going to advocate for alternative ways, like I am with defunding. With defunding, I'm like, that's how I actually treat abortion. Right. I feel resources should be put toward, I think abortion is often a very, hard decision and an unfortunate one that has to be made. But I don't see it as murder. Because again, if I did, I wouldn't be treating it or talking about it that
Right.
way. I would be treating it, talking about it in a much different way.
Arrest a doctor, arrest a woman,
put her in jail.
Right.
That's how I would view that.
Right.
Because if a woman actually takes her child and throws him in the trash, she needs to go to prison.
Right.
So that's how I view that.
Right.
And I don't think anybody in our country would disagree with that.
Because right.
If you murder a child, you need to go to jail for life.
Right.
So.
Right. You don't take that same energy to that place. So if somebody says, "Yo, I cannot vote for Biden because of the abortion issue," what do you say to that?
I don't know if I'm the right guy for that question. Because again, I'll tell you that I don't operate from the same position as I've seen it often argued.
Okay.
For me, I would start where I started. Okay. I would start with an actual philosophical debate around the issue.
Okay.
What I've seen is most people have taken that and said, well, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the most reductions of abortion happened under Obama.
Ooh,
right? So right. That's how I've seen other people, and I've seen people say, I do think abortions are wrong, which is why, Democrats who promote safe sex and contraception, which we know are more effective in reducing abortions, I will go for them. Right. I've seen that argument, which I think is a good argument. The only reason I step back from it is because I feel like you're validating somebody's position that I don't think is one that should be granted legitimacy, meaning that this is murder. So if I say to you, hey, I agree with you, it's murder, and I want to vote for this person because I'm seeing a reduction in murder, it's like, I don't care if it's reducing, it's wrong.
Right.
That's like you telling me like, if you vote for such and such, we should make murder legal, but they'll reduce under a new,
Right.
I want it illegal first.
Right. It then we'll be illegal, not no reduction.
Forget a reduction. It's illegal, and then we'll work on reduction.
Right.
So I would, but if we can agree, if I could get that person to agree that it's a social problem, and in some cases, depending on when it happens, it can become a moral wrong. But if I can get somebody there, then we can have a conversation about who's dealing with it the most effectively. Right. And I think Democrats have dealt with it the most effectively. The Republican approach has only been punishment. That's been it, restriction and punishment. Right? Democrats have tried to address the environmental causes and preventative treatment to prevent somebody from being in a position where they have an unwanted pregnancy, which we know impacts us the most, which makes that easy narrative about Black genocide thrown around the most. It's actually, no, we find ourselves in that position more than anybody else because we don't have access to contraception. And access is not just, can you get it? Is it being made widely available to you? You understand?
Right.
We ain't having more sex than girls in the suburbs.
Right. Talk about it.
But it's more acceptable to educate and allow for contraception and things like that.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and that's important to get to the preventative things.
Right.
Not just the act, because I don't think anybody is born and thinks, oh, I want to get an abortion. You know what I mean?
That's my goal in life.
That's my goal. I'm looking forward to, my 18th birthday. That's not how people think. And, we have to look at the conditions that create that. There's things that we don't want to address. Right. We have a hypersexualized culture. Right. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And it's in our movies, video games, all these things, and families and family structure, community, protecting it. We got to get into all of that.
But we want to demonize the one group, that is a part of that's just a part of the culture. Right. I'm sorry.
And,
go ahead.
And that, that's my thing. Like, we got to be pro-life. Right. All the way through, from the womb to the tomb.
Right.
And my thing is, with this current president, I have issues with his leadership.
Yeah.
You know, he was able to hide behind, you know, a good economy, quote unquote, but you know, the wealth gap, inequality gap is still pretty big in America.
Oh, it's growing.
You know what I mean? It's growing.
It's
been that, you know, it's been inclining. And so that he's been able to hide behind that, which started under Obama.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But when COVID hit, everything was on display. I mean, the lack of leadership, even if, you know, a regular politician that may not care about the people as much, they would have seen it as an opportunity to be a hero, to try to solve something and bring all the great minds in place.
Bruh.
Bring all the, you know, get all the tools, get all the technology, all the things necessary, because this is in the history books.
A crisis is actually supposed to be a president's best friend.
Right.
That's when, if the economy is bad or anything is going on, look at Cuomo. Now, Cuomo actually did a bad job in the beginning, right? He did a bad job in the beginning, and everybody couldn't wait for the man to be president. Why? Because once everybody realized what it was, he brought a unifying demeanor.
Right.
Like Rudy Giuliani was a Republican.
Right.
He united New York City when 9/11 happened.
Yes.
He united us.
Yes.
Right? The man could have become president the next day.
Right.
Like, that's how popular he was nationally.
Those are the moments.
Those are the moments.
Right. Those are the moments where you get your stuff together. You know, but that just let me know, like, because he did not respond to it accordingly, because it wasn't good for him. He thought
wasn't good for the economy.
Wasn't good for the economy.
Right.
He lied to the people and said, "I'm gonna play it down."
Yep.
Okay. He said, "I think it's good to play it down."
Right.
And then he's exposed and he says, "Oh, I didn't want the people to be worried." Now, mind you, let me take you back a year ago. Before that, he called for a national crisis. I was at the gym when he was on the TV declaring a national emergency at the border.
Because of caravan coming over the border.
People were like, "Are you serious?"
Right.
Like, are you, like, people are laughing.
Right.
I know elected officials like, "Is this serious? Are we being pranked right now?"
Right.
Because there was no need to call. So he was fine with making people panic when it came to his base.
Right.
But when it came
their fears.
Right. When it came to their fears, but when it came to the actual pandemic that was going on,
you don't want people to panic.
That had bad timing on his track to becoming a president.
See.
Now you don't want people to panic.
Now you don't want people.
You know what I mean? And so that we already knew what kind of person, but the thing is, when there's no leadership, policies don't matter.
They don't matter.
Left is not going to win. Right is not going to win.
Nobody wins.
Nobody wins. We just in chaos. All your goals break down. Right. All the talk about the unemployment. Look, we don't know how COVID would have been managed by somebody else. I know it would have been managed much better. Right.
That much I know.
Right.
How many lives would have been saved? I think a lot more.
Right.
You know, and when we talk about leadership, I always say Luke Walton, Mike Brown coached the Warriors. Okay, when Steve Kerr was hurt out on medical leave. Anybody can coach the Golden State Warriors in the regular season.
Right.
That team is a well-oiled machine.
Come on.
Anybody, bro, I could have been the president of the United States in 2016. And I guarantee you, and I'm not even joking, everything would have went fine. I could have been president.
You could.
Everything would have gone on okay. Guess what would have happened? People would have surrounded me every day with briefings. They would have carried my little tote. They would have told me what to say when I go up to the stage.
Come on.
I would have handled questions here and there.
Right.
The country would have been fine. I mean, honestly.
Right.
When would the country? Well, I probably would have
even struggled a little bit.
I was trying to look for a little bit out the gate.
Struggle a little bit.
Well,
but you
know why I would have struggled?
Where?
You know why I would have struggled? Because I ain't got Trump's sociopath mentality. Right. Like most of us, when we're not prepared for something, we're nervous.
Right.
Like we feel nerves. We feel unprepared. We feel anxiety. Right. Like if I was going up to, like I'm the president, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm aware of my lack of qualifications. And
I think he is too, though.
Well, I don't think it hits him the way it hits you or I.
Right. Like his reaction is to just cover up.
But it doesn't come with fear. He could cover up in real time without being flustered.
Okay.
You know, like he's not gonna turn beet red.
Okay.
He's not going to stutter.
Okay.
He's just gonna tell you you're a nut.
Right.
Like you sit in front of him and tell him like, yo, you lied. You know you retweeted somebody that lied. That's not true. Well, look, it's a retweet. What do you want me to do? There's no way I could reply like that.
Right.
I don't have that in me. I'm literally not capable of responding that way.
Right.
Because if I'm confronted with bad behavior,
right,
the only thing I know how to do is either get on the defense,
right,
or like shut down, because you clearly confronted me with bad behavior,
right,
that I cannot justify.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm either gonna be like, man, I'm sorry, or something.
Yeah.
He can show up to a rally. You think he's preparing for those rallies?
No.
He's not. That's a talent. When you can show up unprepared and still just do your thing. You see what I'm saying? That's what I mean. Yeah. I would have, but my only point is to say, I could have been going back to that, I could have been the president because the United States is a mature government.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't rely on one person in that sense.
It does not.
But the main job of the president as a figurehead is to instill confidence and unity in the politics.
Right.
That's the job.
Right.
To provide messaging.
Right.
So, when the ish hit the fan, just like when the Warriors went down 3-1, that's when it's time. Right. That's when you need. That's when they were up 3-1.
That's the point for governing, right? Because
that's when you need leadership.
Everybody is moving and operating in their life. You know what I mean? Right. And I just think the irony of right-wing people who argue for limited government, but we're seeing a government on the news every single day. Government in our Twitter, government, you know what I mean? We shouldn't have to hear the government. The government is to serve the people and allow the people in the country to function. That's it. But so what do you say, or what do we say for well, the liberals just want to, they're going to run the country down, you know what I mean? Or like, what do you think is, for people that don't understand how bad the leadership crisis was in COVID, like, and they're not seeing it, or they feel that, the left is burning down the country?
Yeah. So before I move on, I just wanted to say one thing, right? One of the things that really bothers me, and I've heard this from real reasonable people, is that they're just words. Why are you getting so, I don't like his tweets, but at the end of the day, it's about action. And first of all, if you're somebody who's, again, if anybody's coming on now, we're speaking from a Christian, what's up? We're speaking from a Christian perspective, right?
Yes.
So if you're a Christian person, you claim to be a Christian, how do you, of all people, of anybody else in society, nobody places more weight on words than Christians. Right. We actually have a belief that God spoke the earth and the world into existence through his words, through speech. Right. We believe that life and death is in the power of the tongue. We believe that out of the abundance of a man's heart, the mouth speaks. Right. Like the emphasis on words and speech.
But I'm going to tell you this, though. I think people feel that he is fighting for their words. I think people feel that he's fighting for their religious liberty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, if there was a Trump, supporter, like they would counter with that. Well, they're liberals, and we're not liberals, but they would say liberals are trying to take away your right to be a Christian, your right to say biblical marriage, right? They're trying to silence us, right? And they say Trump is, making sure we can still protest our faith.
Right. So I would say
so they excuse one sin to think that, but go ahead, talk to that.
But I don't think that would be a sufficient rebuttal. But I'm gonna still speak to that. But I don't think that's a sufficient rebuttal to the power of words, because I'm making the argument that words shape our reality. And we've seen that with COVID. We've actually seen how the president, first of all, we've seen it way before COVID. Right. We've seen how his words actually embolden people. And we could talk about the difference between, don't tell me that, oh, well, look at Black Lives Matter. No, it's the difference between guys or people rioting, or, you can talk about people rioting. You can pull fringes from any base. The difference is, what's the messaging coming from the leader? Right? What's the messaging coming from the leadership? We have messaging from Trump where he's literally encouraging police to rough up perps as you put them in the car.
That's a fact.
That you're telling me that does not matter? That doesn't have power when you're talking about the issue of excessive force? Right? So the idea that words don't have direct consequence, I would still want to hold them to account on that first, before even moving on to what about the left and the direction that they're taking us into. But you said, what would you say to somebody who says the left is going to take us into, or take our religious liberty away?
Yes.
Right. So I would say a couple of things. One, I think if the country continues to go into the direction that it goes into, you're going to have a lot more problems on your hands.
So if Trump gets elected, we're going to have a lot more problems than
religious liberty. I think you're going to have a lot more problems than religious liberty. Two, when people say religious liberty, first, I want to know, what do you mean by that? What are you talking about?
Right.
Like, you need to be more specific.
What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah, right. What you talking about? You need to clarify that. Like, what are you talking about? Because often they're talking about one issue.
Right.
Like let's just talk about, you're talking about one issue, and you're at, because if you're saying you ain't gonna be able to preach it, you're gonna still be able under Obama. What you talking about?
Right.
I mean, Obama out here preaching more than any other president that's been in there. I mean, like yeah. Like, you saying you ain't gonna be able to. What do you mean though? Are you saying you won't be able to go to worship service anymore? Are you like? I would want to. I'm not saying people don't have any reason for concern.
Yeah.
But I think there's usually a line between where that concern really is and the reality of the situation.
Right.
So I would want to start there. But yeah.
Well, I think it's that, and I think it's like you said. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Religious liberty. I think most people are not talking about religious liberty. They're concerned with religious power. Because they're not fighting for the Muslim to keep their worship.
They ain't.
The Buddhists keep their worship.
They ain't worried about that.
You know what I mean? So it's more about the power than the liberty. And we know what happens when Christians fight for power. We have a bad track record. When it comes to Christians fighting for power, we should be fighting for equality. It's not the same thing. Power and equality, my God-given right as a Black man to live, to walk, to breathe, to be left alone, like Frederick Douglass says. Frederick Douglass said, I don't want a handout. You don't got to give me nothing. I just need to be left alone. You know what I mean?
And I'm going to tell you, oh, my bad. You was in mid-go. I'm just saying, like,
the roots of Christendom are still
so messy, bro.
They're not gone. You look at how they move Amy Barrett.
Yeah. Moved it right through up in that joint like that.
Get the judges in there.
Yeah.
You know, for people that have been telling us it's not about politics, focus on the gospel. That's what they told us. They said focus on the gospel. Don't worry about politics.
Right.
When it comes to their agenda, they've always been that. And so, I don't like saying they. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to
group,
but I'm just saying, we have to recognize, you know what I mean, like what that's about.
And this religious liberty whole conversation, bro, like so much of it is rooted in race. Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I know there's black people. Look, there's some black people that they gonna have to reckon with. Because my question is, and again, we're not a monolith, right? Donald and I are close friends, but we argue a lot too. So don't expect that, we could have a live disagreement too. And I won't go too far into it, but if your fear is you're gonna have to treat a certain community with equality, then yeah, your fear might be realized. Mm-hmm. You understand? Like, yeah. I'm sorry, like if that's what you're afraid of, then well, there might be some reality to that fear. Right. I'm sorry, yeah, but I'm not afraid of that. So that's and so that's not a fear that I will really want to play on. Mm-hmm. But I'll also say, like, bro, that was the main argument for maintaining. That was Bob Jones' university argument for not letting black folk, not integrating the school. It was the religious liberty. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so there's always been this weird thing about religious liberty and cultural continuity. Right. Like they always give a different word to some racism. Like, we ain't gonna call it segregation. We're gonna call it communal continuity. Right. We're gonna give it a different name. Like, people in power can always change the names. But see, as we get further and further away from this moment, we're going to call this, history will call this moment exactly what it is. Ooh. Y'all could call it something else if you want to right now. Ooh. You could change the definitions and you could say, oh, it ain't this, it's that. It will be very clear.
It will be very
looking clear back what it was. Just like when we look at those newspapers with burning buildings behind Dr. King, calling him a communist.
Talk about it.
We know what it is now.
Talk about it.
We can look right at it with the advantage point of history and see what those actors were doing.
Yes.
We'll know now the deflection of Marxism and Black Lives Matter and the looters and the rioters. We know what that language is a synonym for. Right. We know what it's a substitute for. We know now in present time, but it'll be very clear in hindsight. And folks will be shifty and changing their positions. But
that's the thing. Like, every generation we see in this country, there's an attempt to kind of minimize the current sins that are going on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
Like, people in America in the late 1800s were saying, what's wrong with the Negro? Isn't he happy that he's free? Meanwhile, America was leading in lynchings of the African American. Leading in lynchings. When we were enslaved, it's like, oh, they're happy. They're singing songs.
Right.
They didn't know the songs were codes for freedom.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and so there is this attempt to speak on the Black reality, which is a sign of oppression.
Right.
When you don't allow the Black, when you don't
to speak their own,
to speak for their own, and you try to tell us what we feeling, you try to tell us what's right, and you try to tell us, oh, it's not that bad. Say it today, you got a Black president. But we still got the highest mass incarceration rate, the new slavery. I mean, so
it's the reaction to that Black president.
Right. And what that is exposed and what that is created. Right. I mean, Trump rode in on a hate horse, but I think that it's so important that we recognize this. Thank you if you're here joining us. If you have any questions, we're talking about the election. We're talking about how we feel about certain things. you can throw some questions in the comments. Yeah.
Man, a lot was said. I wanted to hit a certain point, just dealing with this question of, because what I don't want to do is sit up here and go through every jot and tittle. And you have people who say they have a common rebuttal to the statement, the president is racist. Okay, those rebuttals have grown, but I'll give you a few. I'll start with one. How can you say the president is racist? Usually when you give them statements that he's made, they will usually reply, you show us history, right? That speaks for itself. His words speak for itself. But once you give them that history, then they say, but look at the First Step Act. They'll say, well, look at what he's done for HBCUs. They'll say, look at opportunity zones, which ain't nothing but a tax cut. But they'll say, look at opportunity zones.
It's a rehash of promise
something that Obama already started.
He called promise. He didn't even take the zone out. But go ahead.
Right. We don't even want to get on that. I mean, but what I would say is be a little more complex. Like, and I don't mean this in a, but you know, my patience grows thin with certain things.
Right.
Don't be so simple. Like, I had somebody tell me a story the other day about Robert E. Lee, and I looked it up, and apparently it's a circulated thing. We don't even know if it really happened. But Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general, they're telling me a story about Robert E. Lee after the Civil War, a slave or a young black slave, because he's still enslaved, right? At this point. Of course, technically he's free, but wasn't. He's in the church. There's a church guy, you know, folks are at the altar praying, and this young black slave comes up to the altar and kneels beside a white man, and everyone, this is as the story goes, everyone is hushed. They can't believe it. This never happened in a white church before. And Robert E. Lee comes up next to him and kneels and prays with him and prays the sinner's prayer. I don't know if this was a rehab story or what, but the point is, let's say that happened. Are you meaning to tell me Robert E. Lee is not racist? Talk about it. You think that you can tell me a good story, or you don't understand the complexity of human beings and human nature to understand that somebody can be a full throttle racist and still have instances in their lives where they're favorable to a certain group? You understand? I could show you examples up and down of slave master narratives and stories where there's positive interactions. That doesn't mean that person has not built their entire platform, in this case, on nativism and white grievance. With some momentary moments of opportunism with the black community. With some sprinkles of opportunism. That's what it is. His whole brand don't get washed.
You don't.
Because of these little sprinkles over here? We ain't gonna wash them in the blood. Stop. Like, the man's brand is clearly what it is right in front of your face. You think people are flying flags? They are flying flags, bro, with the man's name on it. That is not normal.
It's not normal.
That is not normal. They are literally got the American flag, like the Confederate joint. I'm like, what is going on? It's like a new symbol of nativism. And white, it's literally a symbol. It's like the new, I ain't gonna even say it because I don't want to get too inflammatory, but it's like, anyway.
No, yeah, you talking, man, and I'm gonna say this, and we got a question, but Jesus said, "I've come to set the oppressed free." I didn't come to treat the oppressed better. You know what I mean? Like freedom.
Right.
Freedom, not better treatment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, no. Equality. Like, okay.
Right. So, wait, what'd you just say? I didn't see the comments.
No, I'm going to ask. Now, the question is from Dwight. Is the lesser of two evils, quote unquote, the lesser of two evils argument even relevant in this election?
It's the lesser of two evils. This is where I wish Dwight could just come on himself. Because you know Dwight got a whole thing laid out and ready to go.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think that question, well, when people say that, I think it's lazy.
Yeah.
I think it's really lazy. And I think it's a cop-out. You know, and I think it's when you can say that, you're not really paying attention to what's going on.
And what do you mean?
Right.
Goes back to that question.
what you talking about?
What do you mean? What do you mean, lesser of two evils?
Right.
Yeah, I know what I'm talking about with one, but go ahead.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you have we are seeing unprecedented things. All around. Okay. That is a president that is degrading and debasing the government.
Right.
When he doesn't commit to a peaceful transition of power, he has not committed to a peaceful transition of power yet. I mean, anybody, for all of the talk of law and order, for all the talk of sustaining our Constitution, our government, they just kind of let things go. You know what I mean? And you got to look at who's being emboldened, who's being empowered. You know what I mean? Like, why when you look at these rallies and the lock her up, the get him out this country, like all these things, they're it's full of hate.
But you talked about it earlier, right? There's a few things here. You mentioned earlier about the unprecedented number of people writing books during his administration. Let me tell you something.
The man is in power.
Bruh.
People wait till the president is gone.
Right.
To write their
make their money.
Books.
Right.
Monica Lewinsky waited years after the presidency. Right. And she was in the spotlight. She could have.
Bro.
But when a sitting president is in there, you don't do that.
I have a bad fetish. I mean, not fetish. Ooh, sorry.
What?
Dang, bro.
What? I'm trying. What are you?
Hold up. I'm trying to think of what's the word for it? Like a guilty pleasure. Guilty pleasure. My bad.
Okay.
My bad. We ain't getting into all of that, but I have a guilty pleasure, and that is watching the ID channel, which Investigation Discovery, right? So it's a lot of shows about murder investigations, and but there's a lot of shows involved. Often you find out it's a guy conning a woman into a situation, and the way he lies and how she buys into it. I swear, I feel like he's running the typical con game. On people. And it's the kind of behavior you see in somebody who's being conned by a lover. And it doesn't just happen to me. I watched a show called Con, where a woman was doing this to dudes all over the country, right? But the common thread is, even when all the signs are there, because that's what it's easy for us to see watching it. It's like, this easy.
Right.
Like, you should be able to see you being conned. But the con person is telling them things that they want to believe.
Right.
That's the issue. Like, when you're telling people things that they want to believe and they are emotionally invested in, they will literally not look at everything else that's wide open in front of their face. Wide open. And so when we look at it, everybody's telling you who he is. You got people in the administration saying, this guy, every guy y'all said was honorable, General Mathis, y'all held him up on a pedestal. He's like the epitome of patriotism. He's the god of patriotism, right? He's telling you the guy is crooked.
Right.
He's telling you. Like, Can you imagine if this number of people came out on Obama,
bro,
with stories?
I mean, just one.
Just all of what it took was one.
But here's the thing, Cliff. This is how bad. When we talk about the lesser of two evils, I'm sorry, I cut you.
No.
I just think when you look at the number of people that have died in COVID,
yeah,
and the fact that there is no grieving or lamenting for that.
You're not allowed to grieve.
The plan is good.
Right.
We're turning the corner.
Yeah.
Like he's never, I haven't seen it.
And he's not giving his people permission to grieve.
He's not giving them
because let's be honest, we know a lot of these people who support Trump. They're compassionate people.
Right.
These are not non-compassionate people. We know. I ain't got to tell you some of them.
Right.
That we rock with. These are compassionate human beings.
Right.
But they're actually not being allowed or given permission to be compassionate.
Right.
Because they're being told that to be compassionate to this is to somehow give up power to the liberals.
Right.
That's the story and narrative that's being
power
told
to the liberals.
Yeah.
But it's like you're taking the side of a liar.
A liar. A con artist.
That's been proven to lie.
Right.
Speaks in hyperbole.
Right.
Over science.
Right.
Over people in their fields.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy when we was watching the daily press conferences and he was up there next to a scientist. Like, bro, why are you up next to the scientist?
Right.
Why are you taking the floor right now?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a big sign to leaders usually just sit back, okay, the experts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then they talk them back and see, okay, what we want to do, and then they manage. And so this is where the difference is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, thousands of people have died and we don't see a sobering moment. You got COVID. You still are back out here doing rallies. And so there's this thing where he is Herman McCain.
Herman McCain dies. And any other era,
rocking for you.
In any other year, this would have been the story of the year.
Yeah.
Right? This year, it lasted 3 days.
Right.
Maybe even 2.
Right.
There was hardly a moment to stop and even grieve that this man passed away.
Right.
Somebody who was at the center of national politics just over 10 or so years ago.
Right.
In the GOP. And he dies at your rally and we're on to the next thing.
Right.
That's why the lesser of two evils argument in this election, any other election, it has merit. We've always argued. It's funny. I remember in 2012, we were arguing the merits of the platforms, mostly. Some people were definitely, the seediness was starting because Obama was running. Yeah. So it was not just, it was starting to get a little messy.
Yeah.
But we were still, for the most part, arguing the meaning of the platforms. Yeah. GOP was still considered to be low taxes, pro-war, and no government programs. And so we would debate that platform, and also, of course, pro-life. And we would debate anti-abortion. And we would debate that platform versus the Democratic platform.
Right.
It wasn't about this. It wasn't this kind of situation.
Right. Where
we literally can't debate the platforms right now.
Right.
Platforms do not matter in this moment. As I've said 1,000 times, I promise you, if I was faced with a leader like Donald Trump on the left, there's no way I'm voting for that Democrat, whoever they are.
Right.
And there's no way I'm voting for an independent or a third party.
Okay.
Any stable leader that the Republicans put forward, I could name you some now. If they put forward Jeb Bush, if they put forward Tim Scott, even if they put forward what's his name? Not Rand Paul, isn't that the daddy? I think it's Rand Paul. I think his son. I having a brain fart, but yeah, but it could be him. It could be, of course, Kasich, but they don't want to hear Kasich because he done gone over he done woke up and got some sense. He had too much sense to begin with.
Never seen so many Republicans.
Never seen so many GOP people come to the other side because they realize that Donald Trump is running a populist campaign. This is a populist campaign that is limited in its ability to grow because its vision is not expansive. It doesn't involve bringing in, growing and painting this expansive vision for what a conservative America looks like. Right? He's not doing that. If he was doing that, he probably would be a shoo-in to win tomorrow. Right? But he's not painting saying, hey, like this is what conservative America looks like with, controlled spending and, equal justice. I guarantee you, in a George Bush, as much as we can't stand George Bush, if George Floyd in this moment happens under his watch, he uses that as a unifying moment. He doesn't approach that situation with the kind of ratcheting up that Donald Trump did. Because it was a national moment, and that always is good for a leader. Most of the time. Always. You know what I'm saying? So it would be different. It would not be business as usual. And I can name you, and I could keep going down, but there's plenty of Republicans I would put in there. Some of them have switched. I mean, Lindsey Graham has lost his, I don't know what's up with him, but Lindsey Graham as he was, I'd vote for him before I vote for a Donald Trump Democrat. Somebody of that same kind of caliber and leadership style. I would not put them in, regardless of platform.
Yeah, this is not about party. This is not about allegiance. And I think as Christians, we shouldn't show allegiance. I do think that we should be wise in these times. I do think that we should be strategic, and realize the level of, and I've been saying this over and over, and I'm going to read, Dwight made a great comment, but the level of sanctity that we brought to a secular thing is something that we don't do with anything else. What I mean? The type of questions we ask of the president, we don't even ask of our manager. We don't even ask of the CEO of the company or principals of the school in a sense. What I mean? You're not going to question is my principle for religious liberty or abortion, or I'm not going to work there. You know what I mean? We don't do that. And then we bring this to the presidency. You know what I mean? And this is the thing. We have to be practical. And this is why I say, if voting third party made sense and it can bring about a change, really, I'll be about it.
All for it. Yeah.
But the math doesn't say that.
Right.
It's a two-man race.
Yeah.
And if I care about who wins, and even if I don't care about who wins, it still impacts the results.
Yeah.
So let's just say I really don't want Trump to win, but I feel like I can't vote for neither one of them.
Right.
I'm really helping Trump win.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's a two-man vote. It's a two-man race.
Right.
And I think I got caught up like in 2012, 2016, I think, with consciousness. You know what I mean? And the truth is, you cannot bring a purity test to these candidates, because if you bring the purity test, nobody will ever be the perfect candidate for you. Mark Charles, somebody who I admire, look up to, believe he's a Christian. I agree with him the most on things, but there's some things I don't agree with him on.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're never going to have somebody that you agree with everything on. We're never going to have a Christian that's going to be that's going to rise to be the president of the United States. What I have to vote by is priority. I have to vote by priority on the ballot. Healthcare is a problem in this country that for some reason we as an advanced country provide the least healthcare for our nation compared to other places.
Right.
You know what I mean? Poor education in the inner cities is a problem in this country.
Right.
Real estate and housing for our people.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are still redlining is still going on. I know people think that was in the 50s, but I know housing attorneys that will tell you that redlining is still going on. Right. People with housing vouchers, that's cash, are being turned away from living in certain neighborhoods. Right. That's happening in 2020. And so essential workers are being, it's just, I think that we have to look at, okay, what are the priorities, of the people, and not just look at one or two things.
So I would say that's normally the case, right?
Right.
But my only pushback is that that's the argument people are using to justify voting for Trump.
Okay.
So
in what way?
They're saying, well, he's not a pastor. We're not voting for a pastor. We're voting for a politician. Okay. So the in terms of, I think the basis on both sides is actually correct. Right? So right. I think that they are.
Oh, you mean in terms of priority?
Yeah, I think that they would say, oh yeah, I'm not being super spiritual here. I recognize we're not voting for a pastor. I don't need my pastor. I don't need my president to be a pastor. I don't need my surgeon to be kind. I need my surgeon to know how to do the job. It's like they're using that same kind of reasoning, and that's where it boils down to. No, this man, this person, is actually beyond the pale. Yeah. Like that's where I feel like, no, I gotta confront you on who this guy is.
Right.
Like not just, hey, we all gotta accept the.
But I would say the guy is connected to the policy and what's going on. You know what I mean? So what I mean is, how communities are treated. You know what I mean? Priorities more so around the image, the imago Dei, or the value of people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We're not seeing a lot of that.
Right.
And so when we're in the height of a pandemic that we haven't seen in 100 years, 75% of those essential workers are people that look like us, and there's no plan for them.
Right.
And then we're talking about taking away healthcare.
Right.
It shows a lack of value for minorities. Right. So, you know what I'm saying? And so when I look at the mission of Christ,
not just minorities, people,
just
period. People, a lot of people in his base.
Right.
People
are not valued.
They're not valued. No. But when you give them the 5-star package, the gold package, silver, platinum, and gold, you give them the gold package of white identity and all this other stuff, you can tack on it all kinds of abusive policies.
Yes.
Healthcare, taking that away, that's devastating.
Yeah.
I always tell a story of a guy. I work for Medicaid. Dwight, we're about to read this comment. I work for Medicaid, right, in New York. New York has the best Medicaid program in the whole country when it comes to healthcare. Unfortunately, it's being tremendously devastated, right, by this virus. And we can only pray that a change and some federal funding comes in the next few months, after January, prayerfully.
Right.
But I'm in the house of a guy who is signing up for this program to get home care at his house. And it's in Bayside, Queens. And, I don't talk politics on the job unless there's a trust, with the old mothers. We might get into that, you know what I'm saying? Because that's trust equity. We got that. We could go there.
Right.
But anybody else, I don't know, we ain't doing that. So we doing a thing, and he decides to bring it up with me. And he's got Fox News blaring in the background. I'm just doing my job. And so he goes, hey man, don't let them deceive you, these Democrats, this Hillary stuff. This is before the election. This is election season. He's like, they're gonna take everything away from us. And I'm like, bruh, I wanted to say to him, I'm here from Medicaid. a state Medicaid-based program. You wouldn't have none of this. You wouldn't have no home care.
Wow.
You wouldn't have nobody coming to help you.
Wow.
If you get your way.
Wow.
And that's actually about to come to pass because the Medicaid budget is about to get slashed, and my job and people like him are going to be X'd out. And if they get their way with this overturn of Obamacare, they're going to cut off Medicaid expansion. A lot of people, another 15 million people on top of the 20 million people that got it with pre-existing conditions, got coverage through Medicaid expansion. They expanded those who could be eligible for Medicaid.
Okay.
So that guy, he's going to be cut. So he's getting his wish.
Right.
See, just the ignorance. The package deal.
Doesn't even know.
Don't even know he about to get cut off at the legs because he signed up for the gold package.
Right.
Of white identity taking everything else from.
And that reminds me of people that was like, "Yo, we're against Obamacare."
Didn't even know
the ACA,
the Affordable Care Act. I'm
for that. I don't know about that Obama. Get that out of here.
And you would think those people aren't real. Those are real people.
Right. But again, it's where the white identity, the cultural identity is greater than,
the outcome.
The outcome.
The fear of losing that, it almost has more intrinsic value. I had a guy tell me, he argued me down. And then at the end, he said, me and my family don't have health insurance. What do you think about that? Like he said that almost like he was making a point.
Oh boy.
It's almost like he's like this, like stabbing himself. Like, what you think about that? It's like, bro, I told him, I said, what do you mean? I want you. That's terrible.
Wow.
I said, I want you and your family to have coverage.
Right.
I'm sad you don't have coverage.
Right.
But he was basically justifying why he could sort of grit it out. Let's read the White's comment.
Yeah.
You want to read it, bro?
Sure. I agree with you both. I think the lesser of two evils assumes you are measuring them by the same standards. So much of Trump's evil has been normalized that there is no way they are being weighed on the same scale. The lesser of two evils argument left with Stormy Daniels, in my humble opinion.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's
another we talked thing, about that earlier.
The sexual allegations, the immorality. And I don't know how the immorality of, the president is going to make him the Moses for religious liberty. You know what I mean? This is just
right.
We saw what he did with moving the protesters that were peacefully protesting out of the way, tear gassed them, beat them, stand in front of a church with the Bible. Now that is something that is very scary. That is not Christ-like. And somebody might be thinking, well, what's Christ-like about Biden? What's Christ-like about, and I think that's a problem.
So
you know what I mean? It's again, we're talking about, and here's the thing about Biden. Biden is a politician.
Yeah.
He's not my favorite candidate.
Sure.
I'm not celebrating.
Know many people he is.
I'm not cheering for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think it is important that he wins. I think, there's a lot of things just being human decency is on the line.
The White hit it in his comment. He said there's the assumption that they're being measured on the same scale.
Right.
Trump has been given I had somebody who was a reasonable person do a whole long statement about, they made the statement, if you're going to argue that Trump and Biden are, if you have an argument for who you represent, that's fine, but don't make the argument that one has poor character, because they both have horrible character. And went on to a whole lineage, as I commented, because I came in, I wasn't going to troll, because I'm saying, not even troll, I'm not going to even jump in this person's status, let them have their moment.
Right.
So all I did was I asked, is there any Democrat that you would approve of? That was my question.
Touche.
Because I wanted to weed out.
Good question. Because
for a lot of conservatives, it's not about character, it's about the platform of the Democratic Party.
Right.
They don't talk about, they hint, this is why they talk about is Hunter Biden. Because they need somebody with bad character that they can attach to Joe Biden. Because he ain't really got it. Like, his record is clean.
It's true.
I mean, he's got the 94 crime bill, and he's got that silly thing, not silly, that thing with Tara Reid. I mean, that thing is just not even legit. But he's got that. They can't hinge on that because Trump got a whole boatload of accusations, right? So they can't even go there. But like the fact that we are equalized, like the fact that Biden and Trump are being put on the same level in her mind as having equal character shows you the scales.
Yeah.
How out of balance the scales are. Yeah. You need to go get an eye test. You need to go do something. If you can't look at Joe Biden and Donald Trump and to see, but people like to get into this relativism where they can get into memes and alternative sources and start to muddy the waters about the simple things. Like, oh, well, it's not about what you present. Wait, do you say that about anything else? No. Do you know how I live at home? You don't know my character.
Right.
You assume you know.
Right.
But you don't know my character.
Right.
I could be an axe murderer for all you know.
Right.
Right? Like, it's not our job to know everything. He just fronting. You don't know that. That's an opinion.
Right.
Right? What you judge somebody on is how they present themselves.
Right. Right.
That's how you judge somebody beyond a background check. If your background check is clear, I'm judging you based on how you present yourself.
Right.
And the way Joe Biden, basic Exhibit A, the crime bill, I apologize. I made a mistake.
Right.
That's character. What about the Central Park 5? No, can't apologize for it. Joe Biden.
But I'm glad you mentioned that because this is the thing. This is the hypocrisy of the Trump campaign using the 94 crime bill.
Right.
And black men going with that.
Running with it.
When Trump called for the execution of 5 teenage boys a couple years before.
If the man was in power, the death penalty would have been running rush. I mean, are you kidding me? It was already running.
Bryan Stevenson was fighting the death penalty and black men being put on death row down
the
south.
Same energy Trump is giving to immigrants now, he would have been giving that energy to black criminals in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And it would have been on a whole nother level.
Right.
That if he had power.
Right.
So stripping that context from it, that simple, easy narrative is so dishonest.
Right.
And black men running with it is sad because they're about to vote for Trump in higher numbers in this election than they did in 2016. That's what the numbers show.
I hope not.
Hopefully the numbers are wrong again because they were wrong in 2016. So hopefully they'll be wrong again.
I hope not. And our brothers, black men, I feel, there's a lot of pain. We're very disgruntled. And I feel that the most with black men,
Yeah.
And because
let's talk about that.
It's hard to trust a system.
Yeah.
That continues to oppress you, continues to deny you certain things.
Yeah.
And but we can't just throw it all.
But what's the appeal to go to the other side?
I don't know what the appeal is a false.
He said, I don't know what.
a false sense of security.
Yeah.
I mean, black men that I've spoken to have said, they felt they vibe with Trump on, well, he's going to protect jobs for me. He's not going to allow immigrants to come and take my job. It's an American thing. We're going to keep it in the country. That's some things that I've heard, that they felt.
Okay.
Outside of that, it's probably been quote unquote religious liberty. Yeah. And
I will
LGBT,
say, I think that Trump has a presentation and this gets a little more into the psychology, but I said that before, right? I think that his masculine presentation, his strong man act, has crossover with hip hop culture, and I think that we like some of that. We've bought into some of the chauvinism in our own music, and we see this is why Trump and hip hop had a relationship for a long time. You know, he embodied a lot of those values, and you know how I feel about the hip hop stuff,
right?
And how I don't like when we use hip hop as a way to, you know, in a race. But you got to be honest too, that we have fostered. Now, again, there's a lot of reasons outside of just the music that make that a thing.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of societal systemic issues that create that.
Right.
Right. So it's not just about piling on brothers.
Right.
But we still have to be able to, and we just talking to our people here. So I got the smoke for anybody that want to, you know, come at us sideways. But as I speak to my people, and as somebody who loves the culture, like I love the culture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I love the hip hop culture. But bro, there's times where I'm like, oh damn, can't listen to that. Like I'm just like, can't play that with my girl around. Like, you know, it's just like, and I think, you know, Trump has some of that, and it makes brothers feel strong. Go ahead.
But I think that the fascination with Trump and hip hop when he was mentioned earlier was about how rich he was.
About his money.
You know what I mean? It was
about the women.
It was about the flashiness and the lifestyle.
The women.
I mean, the women. Okay.
He's like Hugh Hefner.
What I'm saying, yeah, but it was about the Trump Tower. It was the golden toilet. And anybody else should be, you know, Bill Gates has been mentioned. You know what I mean? Like in hip hop, the sport is competitive. You know what I mean? And so hip hop, unfortunately, has used icons that didn't necessarily represent them.
But it wasn't just the money. It was the way Trump was an outlier in white wealth. Yes,
he was
flashy. That's an overlap.
But it's also about being
That's an overlap.
Being a boss. Right?
Yes.
Right. The brand,
the branding,
the big letters. That's what it was about.
Yes.
But I can't remember who like really knew Trump though.
No.
You know what I mean?
But once he got in power, and Snoop has said this, we loved him.
Right.
As a dude we saw at the parties.
Right.
Because then it was cool.
And that's another, he's an entertainer. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Nobody was asking for him to be their leader.
Yes, that changes everything. Right. That goes back to exactly what we said earlier. If you were the leader of some entertainment brand, it's cool. Right. But if you're the president, if you're the principal of my school,
right,
or you're the leader of our healthcare organization, what?
Crazy.
If he was the leader of North Shore Systems Healthcare, are you kidding me? There's no way people would stand for that.
Right.
No way. Not with the people we deal with every day.
Right.
You understand? There's a different standard.
Right.
So when people say he's a politician, that makes no sense.
You mean not a politician?
He's not a politician.
Right.
That is a terrible statement.
Right.
The politician has to present himself as a moral leader because he is in a sector of service.
Right.
This is not entertainment.
Right.
This is service. Right. And as somebody in the service sector, your job, one of your main jobs, is to set a moral tone for the direction of the country. Right. And he has absolutely sat on that. And when you talk about the institutions that he's undermined, that's what con artists do. Yes. If a man comes into a woman's life and he's abusive, the first thing he does is isolate her from everything else that she trusts.
Yeah.
Any man in her life that's good, he gotta go.
Right.
That's what they do. Right. What, somebody said something?
Somebody said Trump 4 more years.
Oh, who's that? Jonathan Bynum? I don't know him.
I don't know who he is.
Oh, that's what's up. Appreciate you, Dwight. And thanks, Mr. Bynum, for your comment.
Yeah. Appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate you. But that's what con men do. They isolate the woman from everybody else. So when you look at what he's done to the press, undermining the press, undermining the FBI, every institution that we trust, they gotta go.
Yeah.
That's what cult leaders do. They break all of that stuff down to the point where you're the only source of information.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. And that's why I say this is not about platform. It's about the person.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. The politics have come so low. You know what I'm saying? And for a while though. I mean, the lying, you know what I mean? The promising to our communities that we were gonna do something and we, nothing happens. The scandals, the perfect speeches, but yet absence and venom, and so politics has not been in a good place, you know what I mean, for a while, and Trump is a reflection of that. America is a reflection of that.
But there has been accountability for hypocrisy.
There has been some accountability.
Like Bill Clinton was impeached, right? Like there's been accountability when you betray. George Bush lost an election because he said no more taxes. And that didn't come true. Right. And they replayed that over and over and over again. I remember seeing those commercials as a kid.
Right.
Mark my word. That's all they played. Mark my words. No new taxes. And remember, they got him on a lie.
Yeah.
Or even if it wasn't intentional, which I don't think it was, they replayed it. So I agree with you that the hypocrisy of that has always been an issue, but there's at least been an accountability to some degree for that hypocrisy.
Right.
In this case, he's given a full pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And only Biden is held accountable for hypocrisy.
Yeah. I mean, by his base, and this is where it's true, his supporters, you often don't hear a critique from them. You know what I mean? But, accountability, people have been very selective with.
Right.
So though Bill Clinton was about to be impeached for adultery, JFK was a playboy and nobody knew about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's the frustration for me. And of course, Obama's not the perfect president, but the things that he endured,
Damn near it.
I mean,
I ain't afraid to say it.
I mean,
hell of a president.
Yeah. Showed integrity, showed loyalty to his family, didn't have any scams, but yet people would say, "Oh, this man,
he's the Antichrist."
He's the Antichrist. And then the follow up, we see one of the most and he's our liberator.
That's the thing. When you have a platform of the Democrats, they have demonized the Democratic platform.
And both demonize each other, to be fair.
Sure, but not at this level. I don't think you see it coming from.
This is different.
This is different. Right? Like there's a different form of demonization that comes. Look at Mitt Romney. You didn't see the attacks on Mitt Romney that you see on Donald Trump. There were attacks, but not like this.
Right.
It was like people didn't like Mitt Romney just because he's a Republican.
Right.
Right. But he couldn't have been elevated to this height of he did not incite this kind of fear in people.
But Trump plays the victim though.
Right.
He says, he's the most hated president.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Fake news is after him.
Right.
And all these things,
Right.
So I think it's interesting. And they play the victim card a lot. Play the victim card a lot.
But we've been on here a minute.
Yeah.
Before we get going, I wanted you to do something.
Okay.
I wanted you to give a last minute. So he said it is fake news. But that's what I think is a big problem. But I'll speak to this, and then I want you to speak to Black men specifically.
Okay.
Just one last sort of like direct message because I think you did a good job of laying out the reality that, I get frustrated. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been frustrated with our brothers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we still have to be honest that, it comes from a place of legitimacy, right? Whether we agree with the conclusion or not, the grievance or the indifference has been fueled by the system in a lot of ways, and by the Democratic Party, now let's be honest here. We can't look, accountability starts at home, right? It's like I can't expect a stranger to treat me better than my own family, right? So we do have to start with the reality that, like, yo, you're the one that I've been loyal to. So your wrong against me is actually weighs more than their wrong against me.
Right.
So we have to be honest about the amount of accountability on the Democratic. They owe us more of an explanation. We already know what this has been since starting in the 1930s and 40s.
Right.
Fully coming to fruition in the 60s through the 80s. But y'all the ones that's supposed to have been loyal. So y'all have more to answer for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So brothers who have been sort of like disconnected have not been given a reason to be connected.
Right.
It's the difference between you doing something negative to me versus you doing something positive.
Yeah.
A lot of brothers don't feel connected because they can't connect the dots.
Yeah.
And so part of that is their own, just maybe lack of knowing or whatever. And then part of it is also us not getting to our brothers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when we talk about fake news, right, and just that whole term, I think that that has been one of the more brilliant parts of this administration, and it's actually a tactic that you see in dictator nations, right? Whether it be communist China, communist nations, like we can go there since y'all love to talk about communism and Marxism. Communist leaders, this is what they do. There is no free press, right? They undermine the free press because the press is literally there. Their main job is actually to keep leaders accountable. They are an equalizing force in a democratic society. They keep leaders accountable. They tell the stories that leaders don't want you to hear. So that's what Donald Trump has done. He has successfully mischaracterized anything that is not approving of him as fake news, right? Or as the mainstream media. When, as I said before, Tucker Carlson has the highest rated cable news show every single night on television. That is mainstream media. And it's flooding the airwaves with narratives that are in President Trump's favor. But somehow he's been able to characterize fake news as anything that is not positive toward him.
Yeah.
So I just encourage anybody who is in that camp to read multiple sources, to verify your sources. Don't just read sources that you trust in, but read multiple sources of information.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that are shouting fake news are also susceptible to a lot of the conspiracy theories that are running around.
Misinformation.
You know what I mean? And misinformation.
Fake news.
And I just think that, like, I had somebody comment on a post that I made and said, "Oh, this person laid out some great facts about abortion over the years. How it went down under Obama, keeps going down under Trump, but shows how the president is not really connected to the abortion issue.
Right.
It's he showed the policies, the legislation, and all the other factors instead of just the figurehead.
Right.
But I think that when you say never Trumper, right, or somebody, you don't want to listen to any type of critique.
Right.
A good critique can come from the left or the right. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But if I label you a never Trumper, then
good.
I don't have to listen to anything you say. And I just think our conversation, the dialogue, has really went down. You know what I mean? When can Trump say, "Oh, you're right. I should have fixed that. I should have did this." Nobody is perfect.
Why is that a death sentence?
Why? You know what I mean?
Why is it wrong just to say, "Oh, I made a mistake here. We got to do better"?
Right. What? The data shows we're not handling the COVID situation the best in the country.
Right.
The best in the world, should I say?
Right.
But he'll tell you that. He'll say we're handling the best.
Right.
Don't trust it better than anybody. Don't trust CDC. Don't trust who? Trust me.
Right.
And so that's the dangerous thing where we can't be objective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's my gripe with Trump supporters. I love them. I love you, Jonathan. You know what I mean? But I really want people to have more nuance and more balance.
Yeah.
And I think we have to hold them both accountable. Hold Biden. Biden is not our savior. Mm-hmm. Biden has some issues. I'm worried about both of them. They both old. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But we have to get to a place where, the news isn't a reality show. But
Biden subscribes to the politics of decency.
Yes.
And that's important.
And people
have tried to undermine that as being something that's sort of a loose.
I mean, when he says, thing. I will commit to a peaceful transition of power.
Right. No matter who wins. Right. That is.
I will support the president no matter who wins. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that every president, no matter how
the ability to look at the American people in the camera. What was the statement to that when Biden looked at people and said, "I'm going to talk to you"? Trump's reply was, "Oh, that's just him playing politics. I'm not a politician." See, because he's not capable of that.
Right.
He's not capable of looking in the camera and talking to people. Mm-hmm. Right?
I think he is.
I don't think so.
What you mean talking to their issues?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he could talk to them like loosey-goosey. But he can't talk to them and say, "I'm here for you. I'm going to protect you."
You don't think he says that to his base?
Maybe to his base, but not to the American people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe to his base at a rally,
Yeah. I think he's good. As most politicians make promises, but
I've never seen him do it.
But I think what you're saying, like speaking to the issues of somebody that is struggling.
That's what he did.
That's what I think.
Right.
He may struggle with because he's never, and that's been another brilliant thing that he's done. He's convinced poor white America that he understands your struggle.
Oh my
when
God.
He's been
what a con game.
He's been rich, the whole time.
Right.
But what's your question for me?
I want you to just speak to the issues that Black men are facing and their indecisiveness with this election, how they feel. That's where I want to sort of end on because I think that's been our strongest.
So how the black man...
What would you say to a Black man who would say, "Look, man, to me, this don't make a difference to me."
Okay.
This is you're asking me about two racists, who in my opinion ain't gonna make a difference in my life from one day to the next. I was a Black man yesterday in America. I'm gonna be a Black man in America tomorrow, and then ish gonna change.
Right.
So get the out of my face with this. Pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, I think historically, I think as Black men, we have to understand the battle. Even if we had the most, let's just say we had the most pro-Black candidate ever.
Yeah.
And he wins tomorrow, it's not going to bring immediate change for us.
Right.
You know what I mean? This country, it's just like change doesn't happen immediate in your household, in your marriage, with your family, with your situation. There's nothing instant about this life.
Right.
And I think because we've been in so much pain, we miss the incremental successes that we've had over the years.
Right.
And, you know, the number of African American politicians that's entering the game is high. Yeah. Number of women is high. Congress is diverse.
Yeah.
You know, we have a Black woman as a potential vice president.
Unbelievable.
And you know what? A lot of our sisters gonna be mad at us
for
not supporting her.
Mad.
You know what I mean? Like,
they already mad.
Like,
yeah.
So
right.
I just think, man, we have to, like, I look at Frederick Douglass as an inspiration.
Yeah.
Because he lived in a far hostile culture than what we live in today.
Yeah.
Racially hostile culture. And he knew at the time the Republican parties were more attached to the supporting Black people, and the Democrats, well, half of the Democrats were the Southern party.
Yeah.
And he knew both parties were racist.
Right.
But he saw what was better.
Yeah.
And you have to know nothing is wrong with something better. You know what I mean? Coming up and
there's nothing wrong with that.
What better?
It's okay.
It's okay.
You can say something that's better.
Something better can be a big difference.
Huge.
A huge difference from what's going on. And I just think that
I'm gonna have to
we become, I stole it from Obama. He said it the other day. There's nothing wrong with better.
Still dropping bars.
Been
out for 4 years.
But I just think that, man, like, we got to become engaged in the process.
Yeah.
We feel disempowered because we feel not connected to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And so we have the ability and the power, even if this country doesn't give it to us, God is giving it to us.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? God has given us freedom. So whether anybody wants to give us something or not, it's ours.
And we've always demanded it.
And so just as God fought for Israel and sent Moses to say, let my people go, I believe God did the same for us as African Americans in this country. You know what I mean? For freedom. And so I think we have to, when brothers are just disgruntled and give up, that's a sign of a lack of hope.
And that ain't our legacy.
That's not our legacy.
That's not
who we are.
Yeah.
We're warriors, we fight.
Right.
And the truth is, when we did the protest, we said we're doing it for our children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the truth is, we've seen major success, we've seen some step backs, but we're living in a better world than our parents were.
Ain't that a fact?
And our parents living in a better world than their grandparents. And so we have to make sure that
we're actually not.
I mean, right now,
my dad lived in a better world as a young man. Now, the world he was born into was effed up.
Right.
But the world he grew up in and came to be a man in the 70s and 80s, 60s and 70s and 80s, especially in 70s and 80s, was a really a smooth time for Black folks.
I don't know.
Well, relative to us, like, I'll give you a small example. Like the purchasing power. Like my dad will tell you, we bought our house, and we have a nice house. His salary was more than the house.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of the house was less than his yearly salary.
Okay.
Which was $40,000. You understand? Okay. Like, our purchasing power is nowhere near what it was. Also, when it came to spaces we walked in, see, we're in a more integrated time. Like, my dad grew up in the America he was in. There wasn't a lot of, crossing and all of that. Like, you kind of stayed in your space. And affirmative action, when it first took off, that really helped a lot of Black people move into the middle class. You know what I'm saying? So when I say it was a better America for black men, I don't mean that as a whole.
Right.
Right? I'm not talking about for everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's where it becomes in pockets.
But I think it was as abroad, it was still worse. Like my father wanted to be a pilot. Mm-hmm. Discrimination. There were some black pilots, but the discrimination, the barriers were still very great and strong compared to today.
Well, if you talk about the extreme ends, it's better for black people today. If you want to talk about at the top, but if you talk about in the middle and especially at the bottom, I wouldn't say that.
But they're connected though. They're not separate.
Okay.
And so because the bottom funnels to the middle funnels to the top in a sense. So I think cases like Breonna Taylor, things that are being exposed, I think just kind of went.
That's true. That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a hard question.
Lie on reports because they didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was easier to rule in fear. You know what I mean? Because the cop knew he was gonna get away with something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I just now with social media and the transparency, and we have more advocating tools for ourselves. I think across the board it was better.
Ooh, it's better. See, I would say it's a question on that. If you talk about debt, I mean our generation, like we're waking up to student debt, but like student debt, that wasn't a thing for our parents' generation. You know, a lot of the things, purchasing power with homes, like a lot of that's in peril right now for us.
Yeah.
You know, like the ability to get a home, like again, it's never been on a up and down. There were sweet spots in my dad's time in the 60s and especially the 70s, coming off the backs of the civil rights movement. There was a little sweet spot.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like the way that black folk, now today is a sweet spot too for a lot of our people. So, you know, but then it's also cost of living is crazy high. You know what I'm saying? Like you talking about a generation young people ridden with debt, can't get a house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot of things like that people don't think about. And then you talk about us living through the Trump era, you know? Right. So what I'm saying is we can't take it for granted that it's better today. Because it's looking we
can't take it for granted. And that's the thing. Black men, we have to see our place as part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And that's why I have a problem with the protest vote.
Yeah.
Because you're not really mobilizing. Mm. And, you know, a few hundred or 1,000 people not voting is not getting anybody's attention.
Right.
It's not real action.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can't silence your political voice.
Right.
Expecting to make a political change.
Right.
You know, and even though Martin Luther King was not a politician,
right,
he still impacted politics.
Right.
You know, and so I've always been committed to impact politics and squeeze it from the outside, just as Martin Luther King did.
Right.
With the word of God. You know what I mean? Walking like Christ, with Christ in us, we can make change, but it's not just about reaching souls per se and forgetting the body.
Right.
I mean, that's what they did in slavery.
Yeah.
They said you can worship God, but your body is mine.
That's how we don't even know at the altar.
Right. You don't even know the stuff, the slavery mentality that still leaks into our theology.
And our politics.
And in the moment black men start talking about racism, you say, oh, let's get to the gospel. Right. You know what I mean? Like the gospel is about racism, actually.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's about, impacting our world. It's about the injustice that Jesus went through, meeting justice, him coming back and rising from the grave, right? Him taking on the greatest injustice, meeting it with his justice, God's love, taking our sin, our punishment, that we were worthy of, but he took it instead of us. And justice, that's not just mercy, that's justice, because justice is restoration. Justice is restoring us back to our place in God. You know what I mean? And so that's something that's been lacking, and people don't understand that. And so Paul is wrote most of the New Testament, and he exercises right as a Roman citizen.
Right.
And I think us as Black men need to exercise our rights as American citizens and see our place. You know what I mean? As heavenly and earthly citizens.
Yeah.
You know, and not give up. You know what I mean? Of course, there's never going to be a perfect candidate, but we understand we got to be involved in the primaries. We got to be involved in the main elections. We got to be involved in the judges. Yeah. You know, in the New York City, we almost done, like on the ballot, I Googled you had to vote for 9 Supreme judges in Queens. Blessed to find out it's about 5 African-American judges.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And those judges have some say when there's a young Black man in their courtroom.
Right.
And that makes a big difference.
Yep.
When there's judgment, and that they can see the image of God and not just see this person as a criminal.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so these things go a long way in how our community is being shaped and impacted. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's important. Black men, that you stay encouraged, stay hopeful, see yourself as a part of the solution. See yourself as a citizen of heaven and a citizen of earth. You know, and I think we can vote wisely. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We can vote strategically and practically and still do the work. Because the vote alone is not enough.
No.
It's about doing action in your neighborhood, action in your work. And I just want to encourage people. You know, it seems like the country, and when you watch the news, you can feel like everything is falling apart. I think we as men, as women of God, need to be beacons of light. No matter what the outcome is, we still have hope, have faith in God, not man, not governments, not systems. I think I just want to cap off with that at the end of the day. Look,
we still gonna fight.
Yeah, regardless.
So whatever happens,
either way, it's gonna be a fight. Whether Biden win, Trump win,
it's still gonna be a fight. And Biden got a lot of, he getting all the smoke because we coming for all of the seats.
Coming.
If we get this man in,
voice playing,
bro. If he get up in here
and try to play,
and he try to switch up and act different, it's gonna be hell to pay.
Oh yeah.
Believe it. So it's look, the fight, no matter who wins, will go on.
Yes.
And so you know, as Kendrick said, we're gonna be all right. You know what I mean? So
we're gonna be all
don't
right.
be overcome with fear, but be wise, be smart. Don't try to be smart right now. Like don't try to be slick.
Yeah.
You know, they all the same. Don't try to be slick right now. Like, just look at what we're dealing with and take it seriously. Yeah. Like, it's not wrong to look in the moment and acknowledge exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And be honest about the ramifications. As I said, don't be overwhelmed with fear, but don't be dismissive.
Yeah.
Because 4 years ago, if we knew COVID was happening, I would tell you to treat it. If we knew this was going to happen, I would have, the same way I did then. If you gave me a bullhorn and I knew this was coming, I tell you don't be overwhelmed with fear, but in the same sense, I say, get off your couch and go do something, because there's something coming that's going to be devastating to people, that's going to tear families apart. And Jesus, who embodied hope, wept.
Come on.
Right? He could weep with people who were hurting. He could be angry when he saw injustice.
Yes.
Those are not in conflict with each other. We can be full of hope and full of anger.
And we got to be bold. We cannot be silent.
Right.
The things that a governor trying to be, they try to kidnap a governor.
Yeah.
You know, people outside with guns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping whoever sees this, if you're in a place where you can be a peacemaker, you can tell somebody put their gun down,
Right.
You know what I mean? You can like God is blessed are the peacemakers.
Facts.
We need to be peacemakers.
That's
in this season, and stand for righteousness, stand for holiness. Sound like old folk now, but it's the truth.
The old folks,
you know what I mean?
For
like
a reason.
Man, like we have to see our place.
Yeah.
We gotta be like Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Have our sword, have our hammer.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And build.
Build. That's good. Well, it's been fun. Yo, Dwayne, my guy, what's good, bro? Appreciate you coming through.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate all the love. Stack, my guy. Stack said, don't be deterred. Stay focused. My man, Stack. Oh, man. Love you, brothers, man. This was great. Appreciate everybody, including Jonathan. Thank you for coming on.
Yep.
Throwing your comments in there. We appreciate the engagement. You know, definitely hope you're doing well. And my guy, Caleb Dwight, all the people that was on, we'll be doing this more.
Yeah.
You know, first of many. So love and appreciate everybody. Signing off. Peace.
Grace and peace.